Hello, everyone. So, Blaze, I wish every MC would start with that really helps when you're the first speaker of a new conference. So thank you for that. And thank you for then recharging the whole stage with all of your energy. Thanks everyone for being here today. I know for some it's a big effort, especially when it's minus 20. So it speaks volumes about how many people care about this cause. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a personal journey that got me into the world of neuroscience and entrepreneurship. And I want to speak to some of the trends that I'm seeing in both of those areas. So I'm going to back up a little bit now to when I was a teenager. I was not as known as Crystal Phillips, I was better known as Quadzilla. And this is because I had very large leg muscles. And thankfully, this is a huge genetic advantage for the sport of speed skating. I loved speed skating because before I was a speed skater, I was a tomboy figure skater, and my poor mother had to fight me every day to try and put a dress or put makeup or braids in my hair, and I really just wanted to skate as fast as I could in circles. So I became a speed skater, and with this genetic advantage of, Quadzilla legs, I quickly climbed the ranks in speed skating. I got to travel around the world. I got to represent Canada. As soon as I graduated high school at the age of 16, I moved to Calgary, which is where, fun fact, the fastest ice in the world is. It's also where the National Training Center is for speed skating. So I came here, big dreams. I had a great first year. I was on track to making the 2010 Olympics. I was nominated as a hopeful for the 2010 Olympics, and my life was looking pretty cool ahead of me. I went into the next season of training, and in a matter of 3 days, I lost feeling from my chest to my toes. I lost bladder control and developed double vision. I literally went from one of the top skaters in the country to not walking. This is a very aggressive onset of multiple sclerosis. And when they diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis, I was devastated, but I was more confused because I'm like, what the heck is multiple sclerosis? But then they told me the worst news I've ever heard in my whole life to this day, which is, you'll probably never speed skate again. Now, thankfully, I was still a teenager at the time, and I say thankfully because I didn't know anything else. I was so naive to hear, you'll never speed skate again. That was so not a part of my reality that I decided that I wasn't even going to let it enter into my brain. So as soon as I was released from the hospital, I called my support team that I had on the national team of speed skating. Thankfully, they kind of came into my life and helped me relearn how to walk, relearn how to bike. And eventually, although I looked like a baby giraffe on ice, I was able to skate my first skating laps, and then I got to a point where I could race my first competition. I raced my first competition, and I cried myself to sleep that night because my time sucked compared to before I was sick. And the next morning I wake up and it's like a line was drawn down the middle of my body and the entire left side of my body just stopped working. I couldn't taste food on the left side of my mouth, my left leg wouldn't work, my left arm wouldn't work. And that was really the point that hit me. I have multiple sclerosis, this degenerative disease with no cure. And I'm not this invincible little teenager anymore. So I decided that I needed to do absolutely everything I could to not only become healthy, but I still really wanted to get back into speed skating. So I started taking a daily drug injection, and I took that for 5 years. Lots of bruising, lots of pain to do that, but I was very dedicated. But I also wanted to look at what else was out there, and I explored the areas of unconventional healing. I became a nutritionist, I started studying herbal medicine, and basically I was a guinea pig for all things, both natural and unconventional healing. This is really a balance between healthy thinking, so changing my mindset, changing my narrative. I'm assuming this might become a theme of today's event. The other area was healthy eating, so making sure that I was taking all of the superfoods and dietary interventions that gave me the best chance of success. And then of course the last area is healthy moving, so making sure that I was moving and not getting too stiff, and making sure that I was creating a routine that challenged me but didn't over-challenge me, so that I could get back to functioning, let alone thriving and optimizing my elite performance. Fast forward 5 years, and I qualified for the trials for the 2010 Olympics. And I went into the pre-Olympic season of training, and overnight I lost vision in my left eye, which is a very common symptom of MS. And I get more tests done, and my neurologist said, "I'm sorry, Crystal, but your disease looks like it's progressing rapidly. You're starting to develop what looks like progressive MS, meaning you don't recover from your relapses or your attacks anymore, and you start to degenerate until you're in a wheelchair." And they predicted and warned me that I could be in a wheelchair in the next couple of years. And I'm thinking, well, that sucks, because I have the Olympics and the trials coming up. So it's really inconvenient. So they recommended a very aggressive drug treatment plan. They listed all of the side effects with that plan. To be honest, the side effects sounded worse than the disease itself. And so as they were listing all those side effects, I thought, I'll never know whether it's all this like unconventional stuff that I've been doing that got me back to an elite level in sport, or the drugs, if I'm doing both at the same time. And if you're telling me I'm gonna be in a wheelchair in the next couple of years anyways, what have I got to lose to try something else? So I decided to go against my doctor's recommendations, treat my disease more unconventionally and holistically, something that I've been working on for 5 years. And I went off all of my drugs and really focused and created a more aggressive protocol around healthy thinking, healthy eating, and healthy moving. 8 months later, I came just a few spots off the Canadian Olympic team, and 12 years later is now. You saw me walk down those stairs. I'm not in a wheelchair. Thank you. And, I'm not, this could all be a coincidence and I'm just a lucky one, but you look on the internet and realize I'm one anecdotal case of thousands of people out there. So I was really determined to find out, okay, why am I doing okay? Why did I feel so much better the more I explored more holistic, unconventional therapies? And that's when I realized a big gap. And filling that gap became a bigger dream than the Olympics themselves. So the government of Alberta, after I had just missed the 2010 Olympic team, actually sent me to the Vancouver Games on a bursary, just so that I could experience the games, because they were kind of into the story of and following me as a hopeful for the Olympics. So it was a really cool way to end my skating career, and then it was all about pursuing this new dream, bigger than the Olympics themselves, which was to start the Branch Out Neurological Foundation, so I could literally branch out and find an entire new field of study that didn't exist. We called it Neurocam, and it stands for Neuroscience plus Complementary and Alternative Modalities. Now that's a big mouthful, and another way to say it is just we look at high-tech innovation and non-pharmaceutical approaches for neurological disorders. I say neurological disorders because whatever we learn about MS gives us more insight into what the heck is going on in our brain, this organ that has a lot of unknowns about it still. Also, whatever we discover in Parkinson's or mental health disorders or psychiatric problems like schizophrenia, we'll be able to increase that level of knowledge and expand the research in MS. So we really wanted to break this out and think more holistically about some of the solutions and make sure that the funding for research in unconventional fields and high tech had the same level of support so that they could have high scientific validation. I'm actually looking in the crowd, the guy with the cactus shirt, which thankfully he's wearing a cactus shirt because it's really easy to point him out for later. He actually was one of our first undergrad grant recipients, and that was back in 2010, meaning that fast forward to now, and he's our research director, and he's even a founder of a mental health app, which I'll talk about later. Now, what I've noticed over the last decade of building the Branch Out Neurological Foundation are 3 trends within the mental health field. The one really exciting one is called neuromodulation. One technique specifically has had a lot of research that happened here in this city at University of Calgary and the Alberta Children's Hospital, and it's called, what is it called? Magnetic brain stimulation. So using magnetic brain stimulation, it basically increases the decreased activity of the brain in an area of your brain with kids with major depressive disorder. And so we funded that research at the very early stages when no other funding body wanted to look at it because it seemed too risky. Since then, they got it to a level because there was so much good data and great benefits they were seeing that now it's funded by the big entities, by the government and other funding bodies. And it got all the way to the point where these magnetic brain stimulation programs will take a young child from suicidal thoughts and major depressive disorder all the way after a 6-week program to functioning and have the ability to leave their house, let alone call a friend, or change their diet or whatever else they want to do for their therapy. In order to get to that point, it took this brain stimulation to kind of jumpstart that process and give them a head start on their healing. This has actually gone out of the labs and into the hands of patients across Alberta, and the first brain stimulation machines are actually in the hospitals in both Edmonton and Calgary today. So very exciting to be a part of this, and it's still a huge trend in neuroscience today. So that's neuromodulation. The second area, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with because it's very hot in the press and in the news right now, is psychedelics. Now, we have always been very strict about high quality research and scientific backing for anything that we fund. So saying psychedelics, people's brains can kind of go, to all different places of what that means. But what we're looking at is how does psychedelic therapies help someone with mental health disorders get them back to a functioning stage, or help them with their journey using whatever other therapies are helpful to them. We're also seeing companies emerge in this province, which I'll talk about later. Next, I want to talk about a fourth area that is very trendy in neuroscience, which is the microbiome. So this is looking at all of the bacteria in your gut. And the reason why that has to do with neuroscience is because we now understand there is a very strong connection between your brain and your gut. Now, I didn't know this before I started working at the Branch Out Foundation because, again, my background's skating in circles and not neuroscience. I realized that there are more neurons in your gut than there are even in your spinal cord. So you think back to grade whatever science class when they have the model of the nervous system and it's just the brain and the spinal cord. You could argue that brain and spinal cord should probably have a gut on it too. And that's called your enteric nervous system. And now that we know this, we're starting to see a lot of cool emerging research in that field. So now I'm building this charity, raised millions of dollars, funded top researchers, found amazing people like Ty McKinney to do all of this cool research. But I'm starting to realize another gap. Where does all of this research go? I understand that the motivation for a lot of scientists is, and the incentivization program put on them, is publish more papers. And as important as publishing papers are, sometimes it distracts you from the ability to actually move the needle from idea all the way to making real human impact at scale. So this was a gap that I realized, and it just so happened that I had a conversation with 3 guys who had an idea to help bring the IP and the research from university labs from across sectors, but including health, and build companies using capital and design services to be able to get that research out of the lab, build companies, scale those companies in our own province, which will not only diversify economic drivers in this province, but also improve the health and the wellness of the people here in Alberta and beyond. So I joined their team. The team is called Thin Air Labs, and we are raising a $100 million fund to support early stage investments into cool companies that are coming out of the research labs. It's such a cool transition to go from the academic research, and now how do we convert this into companies that can grow at scale so more and more people can have that kind of impact that we all want. Now, because I'm in this now world of entrepreneurship, a few companies that are coming up in our province, in our backyard today. Let's talk about the neuromodulation trend first. There's a company called Nerora, and these are hardcore scientists. The founder has a strong French accent, so he just sounds like even more smart for some reason. And he has created this really high-tech, using artificial intelligence, machine learning to figure out, knowing that there's going to be neuromodulation therapies coming up in our future, and that's going to only increase. they are creating a back end that would support the accuracy and the efficiency and effectiveness of all of those treatments. So that's happening in our own backyard today, called Nerora. If we look at the psychedelic space, we're seeing the Newly Institute emerge. That's for frontline workers and military members. And then I think there's Magic Med is coming out of the University of Calgary, and there are many others. Because cannabis was legalized, some of the pathways to allowing for more research in this field have been paved. And so we've seen a lot of increase just over the last couple of years. So this is like real-time trends that are happening, and companies are just starting to emerge. 4 years ago, I feel like my top 3 trends would have been completely different. Now, the last area is the microbiome, and one of the companies that we actually fund and that the Branchout Foundation is involved with is also in Calgary, and it's called Nimble Science. And Nimble, you swallow a capsule, it gets to your small intestine, and that capsule is so smart that it knows that it can basically take microbiome sample from your small intestine, encapsulate it again while it's in the small intestine, and then you can probably guess how you might retrieve that capsule. And once you retrieve that capsule, you now have information about your small intestine alone, which is much different than just a stool sample, because it's what's happening in one exact organ. This has never been possible before, which is going to open up all new doors in research. And the reason why this is important for mental health is because whatever's happening in the gut is probably affecting our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions. So very cool to see that progress forward. Now, lastly, there are a lot of applications that are coming out. I can honestly say that I probably get pitched a mental health app company on the weekly. It's great to see, because it means that there's an army of support behind all of us who want to see solutions in this area. Everyone is tackling this problem, but I want to mention a couple that really stand out, partially because of their business model, the quality of the founders. I might be a little bit biased to one, which I have to say right now, because again, I'm talking about the guy in the cactus shirt, and his name's Ty McKinney. He's the research director at the Branchout Foundation, and he has been doing research to the point where he's now Dr. Ty McKinney in psychology, and has developed a training tool for mental health where he can actually look at how is your mental wellness right now, and do a bit of a check on how you're doing. I feel like I'm probably butchering exactly all of the technical details, because I'm doing that on purpose to hopefully have you go talk to Ty after and ask for all of that information. So that's looking at kind of looking at the stage of where you're at and where you can kind of go from there with your mental health. Another company that really sticks out is a company that I met with just yesterday called Dive Through, and it's a founder based out of Sherwood Park, and it's targeted to a demographic of 18 to 32-year-olds, using all the social platforms that are trendy in that age category, which I think we really need. And they're more focused on education and resources, not necessarily being therapeutic or practitioners working one-on-one with these members. And they're growing with over 4,500 members on their app today. So it's very exciting to see all of the trends in the science, and not only that, but seeing the movement into real life and into the hands of entrepreneurs who can get it to the masses, so that more than just Albertans can benefit from all of this, but we get to kind of be really proud that they're homegrown here in our backyards. So I hope that this provides some hope and excitement about what's trending, what's coming up, and again, to know that you have an army of support behind you, and there's support coming from all different angles. So I hope this is, a year from now, we're at this conference and there's even more understanding and feeling of support. So thank you so much for listening today, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the sessions, and I will also be speaking on the panel later this afternoon. Thank you.